Welcome into the Tottenham Depot. I am your host, Andrew. You can follow me at A Stetka. You can follow us at Tottenham Depot. This is episode 186, another summer edition of the Depot, coming to you with not a whole hell of a lot to talk about, but we will make a podcast out of it anyway. When life throws you not a lot of football, you make podcasts, something about lemons and lemonade. Scott is alongside. He is at Scotchy Bird. Scott, what's going on with you, my friend?
I don't know, man. Just watching some football, so I don't know what you're talking about, right? There's plenty of football. It may not be a lemonade. Maybe it's oh god, I'm gonna have to think of another type of nice, cool, refreshing drink now, and I can't off the top of my head. But the point is taken. There's plenty of football to watch. I'm actually about to watch Uruguay and Panama right now. But glad to be here to talk Spurs before that goes.
Yeah, that'll give you some idea of the timing that we have on this podcast. We are post USA victory over Bolivia, but pre Uruguay taking on Panama in the Copa on Sunday evening, recording this. Caroline is also with us at CG Stefko. Caroline rocking her Germany kit. I know she's excited about their progression in the Euros. What's going on with you, Caroline?
I'm a little less confident about Germany after today. That was kind of a weird performance. But I have to disagree that there has not been a lot of soccer because there was so much soccer today that I didn't get around to watching any in WSL, which I'm very upset about. So, yeah.
All right, fair enough. There's not a lot of Spurs news, Spurs soccer news, but we'll chat some Euros, chat some Copa a little bit later on in the pod. We also may or may not be getting cameo appearances from Todd and Dakota. We've put the Bolo out. We'll find out if they are able to join. But if not, the three of us will chop it up here. Let's start. We'll talk Euros and Copa, but let's start by talking about some Spurs news, of which there is not a ton. But we did get a fixture list this week. Premier League fixtures were announced. I'm always of the mindset that this is not a huge deal to me. I'm never too incredibly upset or excited. I guess it does allow for some planning if you're stateside or if you're anywhere else in the world and you're looking to make some travel plans. It does give you the opportunity to start making those plans. But what stood out to you guys from the announcement of fixtures? Obviously, Spurs are going to open on the road. I think the only thing that stood out to me is that Spurs are opening on a Monday, which is kind of awkward. It's awkward for the pod, which we typically do on Sundays. We're going to have to probably release the pod a day later that week, that first week of the season, which sucks. But opening away to Leicester on a Monday. Did anything else stand out to you, Scott, from the release of the fixtures this week?
Not a ton. No, I think opening up against a team that just came back up is, maybe a bit of a trap, but also I would say more favorable than a concern, right? We'll see Leicester on the first week, and then you see Arsenal's fourth week, right? That's always one that's going to jump off the page. We do have Newcastle and Everton, I believe, in the second and third weeks of the season, respectively. So those are challenging games. I think historically Everton hasn't been great, but I think Newcastle is going to be a team that sees themselves as competitive with Spurs for Champions League places, right? So big points early in the year, but like you and like you guys have heard me say, I really don't get into the fixture list as much either. I think it's probably a lot more relevant for people who are over there, right? And you're trying to plan your schedule. What games will I be at? What games can I not make? All of that, right? You're definitely paying attention to certain matches at home, certain matches on the road too, which are attractive to attend. But for us, it's just let me know when I need to flip the TV on and be focused, right? So a bit of a different deal for us on this side, but yeah, so not too hyped about much of anything.
You brought up that trip to Newcastle. I am actually kind of glad that it's early in the season that you can get rid of that. I feel like the last few seasons that's been like a later in the season, like, oh gosh, you got to go up to Newcastle. That's always like the furthest type of trip, and it's always kind of a bear to go up there. So I am glad that they do knock that one out early. But Caroline, anything stand out to you about the fixtures? Scott mentioned it. Arsenal home pretty early in the season, the fourth fixture. A couple of weird derbies, or I guess big matches, are midweek as well. The Arsenal away fixture is midweek in January. The Manchester City home match is midweek in February. But what else stood out to you from just going through these fixtures and kind of looking at how everything was sorted?
Well, I definitely didn't look to see which ones were midweek, so that's all news to me. But yeah, I think the Arsenal games, like both of them are pretty early in terms of like first half, second half. So it's kind of, it is what it is. Like in the first game, we don't really know how we're going to look. We don't know how they're going to look. And then having it so early in January, the reverse fixture, we probably won't have too many new signings in by that point. So that's interesting. But otherwise, it seems like a pretty balanced schedule. And it's kind of hard to tell because we don't know, obviously, what our draw is going to be for the Europa League group stage. So that might kind of change how we feel about it. But yeah, I think it's doable.
Mr. TC has joined the pod, and as he says, better late than never. He is at TC_Kasho. Todd, what's going on with you, my friend?
Well, I am not 17 limoncellos deep, but I'll do the best I can to bring some energy to this conversation. No, as we're looking at things, guys, any day that we get to talk about a new Tottenham Hotspur season is a good fucking day. So that's the number one thing that we need to cover. Any day that the Premier League doesn't, at least on its face, completely job us with a fixture list is a great fucking day. I didn't see any sledgehammers in here, though. What I will say is that there's plenty of room at the end of the season for them to drop a bunch of derbies in the middle of our May fixture list. So we'll see how that goes. But other than that, it's pretty straightforward. Nothing stood out to me. Obviously, the Boxing Day fixture not having a game on Boxing Day kind of sucks. But the Boxing Day fixture,
they do have a Boxing Day game. It's just away.
I missed that. It's away.
Yeah, it's away to Nottingham Forest is the only thing. Yeah.
No, I mean that fixture list is pretty straightforward. It's not nearly as congested as I thought it was going to be. Now, granted, there's no cup ties in there, as we discussed already, so that's a big deal.
Yeah, so I do have actually. I did look at that because if you go to the actual Spurs website, they have actually slotted in potentials. Well, no, Spurs did this for me. It's actually on. I will give a little bit of credit to. I'm going to give a little bit of credit to the club here. They stuck in the potential, not only Europa League matches where they will go, but also the Carabao Cup potential matches if Spurs are to advance in the Carabao Cup, and it leaves the potential for 8 games in both the months of December and January if Spurs were to advance all the way to the semifinal of the Carabao Cup. The Europa League will still be going on.
In December already, Andrew?
Well, in terms of the league, you've got Bournemouth, Chelsea, Southampton, Liverpool, Nottingham Forest, and Wolverhampton. But then there's a Europa League game in there, and there's the 5th round of the Carabao Cup in there as well. So that would make 8 matches in the month of December. And then in January, you have Newcastle, Arsenal, Everton, Leicester, but you have the potential for a first leg semifinal in the League Cup. And then the Emirates FA Cup round 3 is stuck in there. And then 2 more Europa League games are stuck in there as well. The final 2 of the group stage, games 7 and 8 of the group stage, which again, we have to keep reminding people that it is not a 6-game group stage anymore. It is an 8-game group stage in the Europa League. So those 2 extra games get slotted in at the end of January. So there is a potential if Spurs are to advance in the League Cup to the semifinals for 8 games in both the months of December and January, which is you're talking about 16 games in 2 months. That is a shit ton of football across the new year. So
I can confirm from my escapades through Football Manager that with this new format, you get hit super hard with those 2 group stage games, and then if you end up in the round of 32 because you finish 9 through 24 or something, right? Then
there's the
you
extra
end up
playoff. Yes.
Yeah, you've got these two knockout matches, and then the round of 16s right after that. It's like every single week you have a European game if you end up in that round of 32. Which I mean, as a fan, that's fucking fantastic. It's not my problem to figure that shit out.
But as we're looking at this, though, now we're having a conversation about the Chelsea home match on the 7th of December, the away to Anfield on the 21st of December, and then away at the Emirates on the 14th of January. And those realistically, all three of those matches being on the back of 2 straight weeks of midweek matches.
Well, that Liverpool game you mentioned is a home match, but still, it's a lot of matches in there that are thrown in amongst the festive fixtures and the Europa League. It's a lot. And obviously it kind of makes the League Cup thing, like, everybody wants a trophy, but if Spurs do bow out of the League Cup in the 3rd or 4th round, rather than making it all the way to the semis, it's going to relieve a little bit of that congestion, but it's not going to relieve a lot of that congestion regardless of what happens here. You're going to have a lot of matches in December and January to choose from. So there'll be a lot going on through that. Well, we kind of talked about it though. Like, the fixture list is the fixture list. There's nothing you can do about it. Like, everybody's got to play everybody twice, and these matches are going to move around a lot. I always look at the start of the season and kind of, we all remember last season how good of a start Spurs got to the season with the first 10 matches. And I think Spurs have the capability to have another good start to the season. There is the Arsenal match, but it's the home match. There is the trip to Newcastle, but again, it's early in the season. It's not like a April one when you've got 4 guys out and 2 more suspended due to yellow card accumulation. So you knock those 2 out early, which I do like. And then, you got Brentford in there. United away has strangely not been that daunting of a task. United have been pretty good for Spurs over the last handful of seasons. Brighton in there, West Ham into October, Palace away. So there's a lot to chew on in that early part of the season, where hopefully Spurs can bank some points like they did last year and get through to the Europa League portion, because I think the Europa League is going to be the most taxing part of this. And obviously it goes into a conversation about squad depth and can we build that up and build the youth and get all of that going. But it should be quite interesting to see. Anything else we want to get off our chest about the fixtures themselves before we briefly talk about the ticket issue?
Well, I did observe that there is no winter break this season, so that was really short-lived. And I mean, it's obviously a consequence of like the European competitions having more games, and there's too much football. Like, I disagree with Scott in a way, because like I do kind of care as a fan, because I know what effect it's going to have on the players, down the road. Like, yeah, we want to watch as many games as possible, but there does come a point where it is too much. And I think we're there.
Yeah, I mean, I think we've been talking about that for a while. Is just the amount. I mean, look at what we're going to talk about later. There's the Euros, there's Copa, there's Olympics next month. Like, there's all kinds of football that these players on both the men's and women's side are playing year round. And obviously in the WSL, it's a little bit different because there are fewer matches and there's more spread out. But overall, it's so much football for all of these players. So I think that's a good point.
No, I completely agree. Like, all jokes aside, it's too much football for professional athletes to have to tax their bodies like that. And of course, their job is to tax their bodies to some extent, but not to the level at which we see these days, right? It's too much to ask, and it leads to injuries. And then you couple that with VAR and all the stoppages and muscles cooling down and all that. So it's again, all jokes aside, not great. And for Spurs specifically, depth is going to be important, and as we've all kind of alluded to and said, it's been a problem historically for the club and probably still is, and it's early in the window. But I was just sitting here thinking we really have to take the Europa League very seriously this year and go in with the mindset that we are all in to win that thing, and that means prioritizing the Europa League at really unfavorable times in the season to do that from a Premier League perspective, right? So I'll be curious to see how all that shakes out. There's so much pressure to finish 4th. I would think, go after the Europa League, go after the FA Cup, go after the League Cup. Every competition outside of the Premier League, we should be foaming at the mouth to go and win, right, at this point. So we're going to have to again really focus on what that depth looks like, and it's enough to make you nervous as a Spurs fan come crunch time in Premier League. And I'm talking like February, March, when you're going, to I'm trying to think, I was going to say Southampton, but they're no longer around, right? But just those types of games, right? You guys know what I'm talking about, where a Brentford or something.
It's like the match away to Fulham on March 15th, which is going to be
exactly.
Hopefully,
Perfect
there
example.
are enough bodies. Like that's the kind of match that we're talking
because
about.
those are the points that have fucked us over and over. God, I said I wasn't going to swear. That's 2. Count them up. But those are some matches that have really hurt Spurs in the past, and even the seasons. I know I'm going here, and I'll stop after I say this. But those 2 seasons in a row where we finished second and almost won the league, it was those types of trap games that really cost us in the end, and going to be an issue again this year. So over to Levy and the team that brings in players, right? Because it's time to get moving. And again, I understand there's reasons we haven't signed players. I'm not trying to get at that, but it's time to build depth for sure.
So speaking of Levy, ticket prices are going up again, and this is something that, as 4 Americans sitting here on this podcast, we're not really going to be able to. And look, we've talked about this before, but this doesn't affect us as much as it does the every week match going fan. It's obviously a problem that the club continues to hike ticket rates. They are increasing ticket prices this season by £6 for the A matches, which are the matches against basically the other big 5 clubs plus Newcastle. And then they're hiking them by £1 on the B and C matches, which is everybody else. And I don't really know what else to say about this. I feel like I come on this podcast every time Spurs do something like this and bone the fans, but they're not screwing us over as Americans, as people who are abroad, as much as they are the local fans, other than to say that really sucks and I wish they would stop doing it. Where else can we go with this? I know that this is a business, and I know that the club is running this thing like a business. But I feel like they're raking in more than enough money to be competitive and to do what they need to do without carrying the burden onto the fans.
Are you saying that inflation isn't right and we're against it? Because, I mean, yes, I agree with you, but that doesn't make it any more of a realistic fact of the matter. Like, what are we talking about right now? Prices are going up everywhere and everything. Does it suck? 100% it sucks. Do I feel bad for the fans? Yes. Do I feel happy that they at least brought back senior ticket prices and brought back junior ticket prices? Absolutely. Yes, I do. And they even though those prices are going up a little bit, they didn't do away with them, which was something that they listened to the trust. And we're having a legitimate conversation with the fan base saying, hey, listen, like the cost of business is going up everywhere. So yes, I understand this is tough, but this is kind of where we're at. It's £1 and £6. It's not £10 and £20. So, I mean, does this suck? Sure. Is it incremental, pricing fans, local fans out of the matches? Yeah, it is. I see it. I understand. That's not us, and that's not Spurs. That's business. And so it's kind of a bummer, but also it could be worse.
Yeah, I totally agree. And like I said, go ahead, Scott.
No, I was just going to say it's really hard to disagree, and not that I'm even looking for a way to, right? I agree. It just the nature of sports these days, and especially the nature of a brand like Spurs, which is becoming honestly a global powerhouse. We've talked about it numerous times on this show recently, and as Spurs globalize and the demand for seeing Spurs at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium increases, prices are going to go up. I would love for that to not be the case, but it is. And I think we could go on and on in numerous other episodes if we wanted to for an hour at a time talking about the intricacies of all of that, right? As Todd has already spoken about, it's inflation. And again, it is what it is.
I think we can probably leave it there. Like I said, it's not a topic that it impacts us directly, but we can speak to that part of it, and that's about it. Let's move on to talking about Rodrigo Bentancur for a moment here, because we did speak about him last week following the racist remark that he made during a television interview. And I think that the club had, I said it last week on the pod. I said, if the club doesn't come out with a statement, I'll take the club to task. The club did come out with a statement. I think it's pretty much exactly what I expected from them, in that I'm not overwhelmed by it, but I'm also certainly not disappointed by it. The club released the statement saying, following a comment from Rodrigo Bentancur in an interview video clip and the player's subsequent public apology, the club has been providing assistance in ensuring a positive outcome on the matter. This will include further education for all players in line with our diversity, equality, and inclusion objectives. We fully support that our captain, Sonny, feels that he can draw a line under the incident and that the team can focus on the new season ahead. We're extremely proud of our diverse global fan base and playing squads. Discrimination of any kind has no place at our club, within our game, or within wider society. This, like I said, was kind of exactly the type of statement that I expected from the club. They're going to provide diversity training for players, which I think is the right thing to do. If they weren't doing it already, I don't know why, but I would imagine they were doing some sort of something, but this will further emphasize that. Sonny's statement said the following: I've spoken with Lolo. He made a mistake. He knows this and has apologized. Lolo would not mean to ever intentionally say something offensive. We are brothers and nothing has changed at all. We're past this. We're united and we will be back together in preseason to fight for our club as one. There was also a statement from Rodrigo Bentancur, a more permanent statement rather than just one posted on his Instagram stories, which is lengthy, and I'm not going to read the whole thing, but if you would like to find it, it is on his Instagram page. I think the thing that we want to discuss here a little bit further is I appreciate that Bentancur issued a more formal and permanent apology for this, but the way that, and this is going to get into semantics here, the way that it is worded is not great. And I want to allow for some grace for translation, but I also want to say that there's a little bit of wording in here that is emphasizing the fact that he was only referring to Sonny. When you listen to the original comment, it's a very broad comment that anyone could be offended by, which is why we're discussing it on a podcast for a second straight week. Caroline, I know you had some thoughts on this in particular, just in the way that he apologized. What do you have to offer for us on Bentancur?
Well, I think you hit on it right there, is that and this is the thing you see a lot of times when it comes to apologies from celebrities who I think have good intentions. Like, nobody's doubting, Bentancur's intentions here. The problem is when they don't actually address the actual hurt that happened. So, like you were saying, it really felt like something that was not just aimed at Sonny, and a lot of people did take offense at it. And I think that was really where, for me, it fell short of being, a full sort of satisfying apology, is that he didn't really directly apologize to those fans. And I think that was kind of what was missing from both his apology and also from the club statement as well. Because we know that, there are a lot of Tottenham fans, not just in Asia, but, Asian people in England who live there and are longtime fans of the club as well. And a lot of them felt pretty let down by this. So I do think that they still deserve a proper apology. And it's disappointing to see, him kind of make this attempt to follow up and then still come short in my eyes.
Yeah, I agree with everything you're saying, Caroline. It's feels a little bit short. I also, this goes without saying, but it's just such an unnecessary thing. And I think it goes into, for me at least, a broader conversation about, and they're saying this is a joke that's common in my culture, blah, 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 which maybe is problematic in itself, right? But I just think anytime you're joking, there's a good chance you're saying something that could hurt somebody, right? In some way, shape, or form. And obviously racism is a major problem right now. I am not qualified in any way, shape, or form to talk about how it feels to be, the recipient of racist comments and racist jokes. I'm a cis white male, and fortunately we'll never have to experience that, right? And but I will say that from my point of view, I think we've come a long way in being more aware of the way that racism is directed at various types of people. And I think that the world has a long way to go when it comes to the racism that Asian people experience. And I think the world has a long way to go with racism in general. Let me back up. That's goes without saying. And I want to make sure is well established. But I personally have seen this becoming more and more common amongst Asian people, and it was just really disappointing to see somebody I look up to fall into that category, regardless of the joke or the level of seriousness that was attempted to be assigned to what was said. So,
and clearly Bielsa got the note and has disciplined him because he's not starting tonight for Uruguay. So I think we put a bow on it here, Andrew.
Yeah, and he's going to play out the Copa and join up with the team in preseason. And I think the thing, the way I'll put a bow on this is the thing that still disappoints me about this is that Sonny has to deal with it as our captain. And just we talked about that a little bit last week, and I won't belabor the point, but he doesn't need this bullshit. I'm sorry, he just doesn't. He's got enough on his plate leading a team. Hopefully he can move on from it. Obviously, based on his statement, he has. And we move on from there into a preseason, which we were just looking is not far away. We're 3 weeks from the end of both the Euros and the Copa America, and 3 days later, Spurs have their first preseason match. So we're about 3.5 weeks away from Spurs actually taking the field in a preseason match, which means preseason will be obviously well before that. You guys want to wrap today with a little bit of Copa and Euros chat? I mean, I have been poking in at matches. I fully admit that I've been way more interested in kind of taking a little bit of time away from soccer. I did watch the US game today against Bolivia. Maybe we can start it there just because we all are all Americans and do have a little bit of the US love in our heart, even though Caroline's rocking a Germany kit today. Caroline, what did you think of the US and their opening performance at the Copa America today?
The 2 goals themselves were very exciting, kind of get you off your seat kind of goals. So that was great, just to see some better finishing from a couple of the players. The only thing is that the second half was pretty bad. It was just getting a little sloppy, and I mean, there were quite a few subs who came in, and I think everyone's just going to maybe need a little bit of time to ramp up as the group stage goes on. But yeah, I don't know. And considering that this is definitely, one of our easier opponents that we're going to face in this tournament, the fact that we could only put 2 up against them might be a worrying sign. So yeah, we'll see. Y'all know how I feel about Greg Berhalter. I just don't have faith in him. So
not a Burkholder fan either, obviously. If Ricardo Pepe finishes any of the 5 chances he should have put away in that second half, I think we're having a different conversation. But Pepe gonna Pepe. So we are exactly where I figured we would be, which is 3 points to the good. Not excited about playing Uruguay, really hoping we can beat Panama so Uruguay's a free hit.
Yeah, that would certainly be nice. Bolivia is, Caroline, you mentioned it, not good. They're the worst team in South America by far. And Panama will be an important one to get under their belt. That comes up on Thursday in Atlanta. And then I know Scott, you're going to the Uruguay match next week, right? Next Monday in Kansas City.
So
yeah,
cool.
Yeah, I'm excited.
He'll be pumped
Good
about
friend
that.
of mine hooked us up with some awesome tickets right behind the goal in the third row. So should get a good look at some of these guys up close, which will be exciting. And more than anything, just a good group of friends converging on Kansas City to hang out for the weekend and go to the match. So I'm looking forward to it. And today, securing those 3 points gives us an even better chance of going into that match already having gotten through the group, right? We got to beat Panama, but I would really like to see us in a situation where we can just take it to Uruguay and really go for it instead of having to pragmatically, work to secure a result. So yeah, it should be really cool. And like I said, today was a really good start to what I hope is a good tournament for the U.S.
It's there have only been 5 or 6 matches played in the Copa thus far because it just started this past week. But in the Euros, we're getting through to the group stages now, through the group stage rather, and nearly to the knockouts. There are more matches to be played this week. The final group stage matches. We've got a handful of teams through the knockouts, including Caroline's Germany squad. Spain is through. Portugal is through, as is Switzerland. England still with work to do. Not that there are Spurs players to watch on England's squad, but I know a lot of our listeners will be interested in England having work to do. They're going to face Slovenia next and leading the group, but not out of the woods yet. What's been your guys' takeaways from watching Euros and knowing full well that a lot of the players that are involved in this tournament are kind of on hold when it comes to transfers, and that's the reason we have nothing to discuss for the next handful of weeks transfer-wise on the men's side.
Well, I mean, the thing that really stood out the most for me is obviously, some things change, uniforms and such, and some things don't. Death, taxes, Harry Kane beating Kasper Schmeichel like a rented mule. These things, there are certain things in life that are just certain. And so I'm glad to see that regardless of the color of the uniform, we're still seeing those things come to pass. Beyond that, Garrett Southgate it's problematic. Just watching that guy attempt to not crap his khakis on the touchline in the middle of one of those matches is difficult to see. He looks unsure of how to tie his shoes, let alone who to sub on. And that was evident by taking Harry Kane off when you need a goal against Denmark late. I don't know, man. If you're an England fan, I'm sorry for you, because if I learned anything from that match, it's that y'all don't have a snowball's chance in hell of winning this tournament as it stands right now.
It's so funny you bring that up, because I see all the England fans complain about Gareth Southgate, and I feel like the same way about the U.S. with Greg Berhalter.
They're the same dude.
Think that man, they're the same guy, except Berhalter has
one wears
way
Jordans,
less
one
talent.
wears a waistcoat.
Right, and Berhalter has way less talent on at his disposal to deal with, because England are obviously much more talented than the U.S. in my eyes. But man, there are some comparisons between England and the U.S. in terms of the coaching staff. It is really wild, and the reaction, I think, too, from both fan bases is very, very similar, if you ask me.
The only difference is that England have Harry Kane as a very convenient scapegoat. And I mean, I'm not going to say that he's had a perfect tournament, but it still feels like he comes under way too much criticism from his own fans of the England team. But yeah, I think with England, they were kind of set up to fail with the squad that they brought to the tournament in the first place, because they're just so light in certain positions and just a real lack of creativity. Like, we know, obviously, Madison didn't get called up.
You like the midfield?
No. So
I'm just over here going, how's Trent Alexander-Arnold getting on the pitch in the midfield with those players?
Yeah,
when you're leaving James Madison and Jack Grealish at home and then starting Trent, like what happened?
It's a strange situation, I feel like, with that squad. And even as he kind of let go some of those players that were holding them back in terms of like Jordan Henderson, etc., but it's still a mess. So yeah, I don't think England have really a realistic chance. And to me, the interesting thing about the group stage has been the matchups between like the top teams have been some of the least interesting games. Mm-hmm. And it's been all the sort of underdogs who have really been providing the drama. So it'll be interesting to see which of those make it into the knockouts, mostly through that like best third place team route. But yeah, we could have some interesting knockout matchups.
Yeah, well, it's interesting too. Yeah, well, when you look at the expansion of the tournament to what is it, 24 teams now?
24, yes.
24 teams. And I was thinking about this the other day. You've got Hungary, Slovakia, Slovenia, Albania. There's a lot of teams that historically aren't at the Euros very often. And because of that, teams aren't as well prepared against them. I mean, I can't remember which match it was, but one of the matches 2 days ago, they were talking about how these teams had only played. It was Romania in their last match, whoever they played in their second game. They were talking about how these two teams had only played each other once competitively ever in the history of football, right? So those kind of things are going to happen a little bit more often with the expanded tournament. And I feel like it's very much less so just straightforward and predictable, right? Because of that. So it's been a lot of fun. I personally I really think the Euro may be my favorite international tournament, which is hard to say as an American, and we're not there, right? World Cup's always a wonderful experience, but something about the Euros and just seeing all of that talent compact into one little competition is pretty incredible, and it's been really fun to watch.
Well, the reason you can say it is because it's true. I mean, the World Cup gets watered down by a lot of teams that aren't as good as some of these European teams. And you just brought up like teams like Hungary, Albania, Slovakia, Austria. Like those are better than, name Australia, or like those are better teams to watch because they're more competitive. They're better teams in general in the Euros on a day-to-day basis. You were bringing up Romania, Belgium. That group is the most fascinating to me because every team has 3 points. And that's the cool thing about these final. The only Group A, the group that Germany won, Switzerland finished second, Hungary sits third, could qualify as a third place team. That's the only group that is done playing. There's so many other groups that are still very undecided, including England. Which it's funny we brought up England and like all of the criticism that they're getting. They do lead their group. They're completely in control of their own destiny. You just got to go out and beat Slovenia on the final match day of the group stage, and you're going to win your group and be fine. Like as much flack as they've gotten.
Teams? Denmark, Slovenia, and Serbia. Yeah, good for them.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Like, well,
yeah,
but you gotta play who you've been drawn against. Like that's the thing. I mean, a group like Romania, Belgium, Slovakia, and Ukraine all having 3 points, that's fun as hell. Like that's good European competition right there. So,
well, and on the transfer topic, it is kind of nice that one of these sort of breakout stars of the Euro so far, Dragusin, already plays for Tottenham, so we don't have to go and try to get him.
That's a really, really great point.
Yep.
He has been talked a lot about, like just in general terms, and he's still so young and has looked really, really good despite their loss the other day to Belgium. He has been a standout, and that has been fun to watch.
Oh, you weren't talking about PEH? I'm sorry, my bad.
Well, he also still plays for Tottenham, technically, if you weren't aware. I liked reading the quote this week from PEH's agent, his new agent, saying, "Yeah, we're not sure about his future. We're going to wait until after the Euros." That was the biggest no shit Sherlock moment of the summer for me, because obviously you're going to wait till after the Euros.
Yeah, the interesting thing with PEH is he consistently performs at a very high level from that more advanced role for Denmark, and sometimes I just sit here and wonder like how he couldn't be utilized in an AN system in a more advanced role when I don't know,
maybe.
Right?
No, it's different.
Yeah,
not
that's very good. You make
sauce.
a very good point. International football comes with a lot more time on the ball, and I completely agree. But I don't know. I just want it to work out so badly for Højbjerg. I love that guy.
Me too. I hope he goes to Italy, Scott, or something.
He'd do very well in Syria. He really would.
Yeah,
he really would. There's a lot of talks of him to Napoli, and we all know Conte loved him, so I wouldn't be super surprised by that. And I think, honestly, who wouldn't want to go live in Naples? Like, holy shit.
Sign me
up. Go play professional soccer in Naples? Sure. I guess I could be convinced to do that, right? So, yeah, I'll be super happy for him if that happens. But ultimately, he needs to go play somewhere. And
I'm going to be sad with no Danish players on Spurs. I don't know what I'm going to do with myself.
Eriksson, bring him back, baby.
No, we're good on that. I love myself some Eriksson, but you can't lift 2 trophies in a Man United kit and then come home and
that's fair.
Sorry.
No, I'm also really glad you brought up Dragusin, Caroline, because he has been phenomenal. He's commanding. You can tell that his team looks up to him and sees him as somebody who they can kind of ride the storm with, and depend on through some of those tougher moments when they're under siege. He's going to be competing for minutes next year. And I know how that sounds with Van de Ven and Romero being as good as they are. And I'm not saying he'll start more than either of them, but Radu is showing the manager and the world really that he needs to be in the mix for opportunities to be in the first 11 often next year. I think he's been really good.
Well, fortunately,
it's going to be important for depth. Yeah,
we're going to have enough games
Yeah.
and domestically for him to get a lot. Like, it wouldn't shock me if that guy starts 15 to 20 times for Spurs next year.
No,
I think it's going to be necessary.
Yeah, he'll be close
I like
to Romero and Van de Ven in appearances, all comps, not Premier League, but all comps. He'll be close to them in appearances for sure. And somebody else is going to have to be. So, I mean, I know we're not talking.
Even if it's just a matter of bringing him on in the 65th or 70th minute to get Romero a blow during a week where you've got another match coming up on the weekend, that kind of thing. Like, those are going to be important moments to keep those guys fresh. The only problem I'm having with watching Dragusin play for Romania is that they have a forward named Dragus, and every time his name is mentioned, I look up and I'm like, wait, what's Radu doing? Oh no, it's not him. Never mind, it's another guy. Which is always tough.
At the very end of their last game, he was, playing like a forward practically. So, it works.
Maybe he can score one off the top knot, like like Gareth Bale used to do. We'll get him to do that. So that's all I got for this week, you guys. This has been another fun summer edition with, again, not a whole lot to talk about, but we beat around some soccer topics, and we're going to have more of the same over the next few weeks as these two big competitions roll on. And obviously we're about a month away from being able to talk about some Olympic soccer as well, which I know is way less important than these two tournaments, but that'll still be something going on. And I'm sure that there will be plenty involvement on the men's and women's side for players of interest or even Spurs players in general. So just not a lot of transfer news going on with these big events happening. Everything is kind of on hold and everyone's just kind of in a holding pattern, but we appreciate you, the listener, for giving us a listen anyway and tuning in. You can be sure to follow Todd at TC_Kasho. You can follow Caroline at CG Stefko. You can follow Scott at Scott G Bird. You can follow me at A Stedka. Follow us at Tottenham Depot, and be sure to leave us a rating and review on your podcast app of choice. Really does help spread the word about the show and get it out to everyone else. Until next week, this has been the Tottenham Depot podcast. As always, come on, you Spurs.